Well, my grandfather was Walter Weatherwax, and he passed away when I was only 3, but he moved to New Mexico, where my father was born in 1907, and he was an Army Territorial Scout for the Indians, and he also was a U.S. Marshal, but not all the time. It was one of these things like when they wanted a posse, they came and they'd say, Walter, put on your badge, put your gun on, we're getting ready to go out and we're getting ready to go out and look for bandits, which they did one time. So he also trained horses and was a trick rider for Buffalo Bill's Wild West Circus. My father could trick ride too. He knew horses, he could train them. He'd learned these things from his father. But my father would go down, I guess there was this thing called a Nickelodeon, put a nickel in the Nickelodeon and you'd wind it and you could see things. Well, my father fell in love with the whole concept of Rin Tin Tin, a dog that plays in movies, you know. He really loved that. He says, this is what I want to do. How he got into the whole thing is he came to Hollywood and he was doing stand-in work, you know. They go down to be extras. He realized if he took a little dog with him, that would be an extra thing, you know, that they'd say, oh, well, not only do we get a kid for the extra, we have a dog too, so it's extra bonus there. So he'd get picked over a lot of other kids. So he had a shot where the dog, he's supposed to be on a newspaper, delivering papers on a bicycle, and the dog is with him, following him. Well, what he did is he taught the dog to take the newspaper. The dog ran in the house with the newspaper, and because they had the door open, the people were outside. He runs into the house. The director says, well, you're finished, but he says, we need the dog for the interior shot. Well, then my father went and did it where he drops the paper and goes back out the door for the interior shot. And there was a guy named Henry East there that saw this, and he was an animal supplier for dogs. And he saw my father's talent. He says, you want to go to work for me? And my father went to work for him, and for him, he trained Asta for the Thin Man. My father didn't keep collies. Collies didn't get jobs. You know what we got our jobs with? Most of them were mutts. I'd go out and, as a kid, I didn't have anybody to play with, so they'd find me out in the kennel with one of the mutts, flavor of the day. And he did have a couple of shepherds because they got jobs. And we had a bulldog because they got jobs. But mostly it was mutts. Nondescript dogs is what the movies wanted, so he didn't have a collie. And this guy named Howard Pat brought this collie to him. They were friends. He was a trainer himself. And he says, this dog chases motorcycles, and his owner wants him broken. And he says, I can't break him for chasing these motorcycles. Could you? So Dad says, yeah, for I think it was $10 or something. I don't know. Anyway, Dad couldn't break him up at either. And so he came back, and Dad said, I can't break him up. But he says, just forget the whole thing. And he said, well, but you do owe me board for about $10 for boarding him. And Fax said, we'll keep the dog in lieu of the $10. So actually last was the $10 purchase. This dog Pal. Well, then my father didn't know what to do with him, and you know, times are tough. He had to feed all these dogs, and so he was going to take. My mother said, well, he was going to take him to the pound, but he decided, no, I can't do that. And here comes this Lassie Come Home movie. Well, my father's preparing to do a movie called A Rip Goes to War. This was during the wartime, so they were making those type of movies, and now he has to go get this dog. Well, the dog has mange, he has no hair, he's a mess. And he gets the dog and goes in there because they told him, look, we need a dog to stand in for this other dog. It's not working properly. MGM had hired their own collies. And he said, the dogs are not performing properly. We need you to come in, Rudd, at least do this river shot. So Dad prepared for the river, basically. That's all he prepared for. And the dog swam in the river, and the current started carrying the dog down the river. So Dad just kept working, and he came out in front of a color cam that they were testing, and Dad just kept working him. He had him come out, lie down, crawl, get on your side, struggle. They shot it, you know, and the director looked at that, and he says, you know what? He says, Pal swam in and Lassie swam out. They took it back, looked at the footage, and they said, this will be in color. We were all the substitute prop boy that you used, or girl that you used to train the dog on before you went with Roddy McDowell or Elizabeth Taylor. I was the guy you teach the dog to kiss in the face. I had baby food on me all the time, and eventually you get away from the baby food, the dog learns to kiss you. But I always had that stuff in my face, and when I was about 11 or 12, I maintained 40 dogs before I went to school. And I came home and took care of them after that, and then fed them at night. And so I knew all about dogs, you know, as far as that goes. But I actually didn't become a trainer until I went on the Lassie show in 1962, and I actually started to learn how to train a dog. We would do fairs and rodeos sometimes. I never liked rodeos, but we did fairs. And what he would do is he'd have a writer put on his contract, it was an additional page, that said that wherever we go, that we would go to a hospital, a children's hospital of some type. It didn't matter what type, whether it's, whatever the illness is, it didn't matter. He did that, and it was tough on him too. I could see this is not good. This is hard to do. Why do you do that? He says, I came from nothing. He says, I'm fortunate. It's my church, he says. That's how I do my church. And then I thought about that, and I thought about, in retrospect, the hospitals that we did. And I've done my movie career. 42 years of making TV, movies. I couldn't even tell you my body of work. It's vast. And I said, well, I'd like to apply this in another way. I want to go to what we did with those personal appearances as hospitals. I want to teach, and with what, autistic people I've taken Lassie to people with Alzheimer's, they didn't know who it was, but they were happy. I would like to do that, and I'd like to show people how to train their dogs, to properly train them, so they can go and do these things. See the veterans from the war that have come back, and these dogs are so good for any type of therapy, for anything.
For some children and adults with autism, a service dog can really make a big difference. There are some little kids that instantly just take to dogs. They are the best buddies with dogs. And that child would be a good candidate for service dog.
I'm not going to train a lot of dogs myself. I've trained so many dogs, but I can show other people how to train their dogs. So he's properly trained. They have that venue, they have that avenue and that pathway, so they can go and work with people's hearts and minds.